So there's a misconception that if you're single, you are incomplete, perhaps damaged, salvaged, and you won't be happy until you find your one. And that is not true. That is bullshit. It is a message that has been fed to us by media and advertising. The truth is, when you're single, you have the richest soil for growth. That's why I created this podcast. And unlike other podcasts, this one is host-driven, not guest-driven. That means I will be rotating health and wellness experts 3 times a week to give you the giant box of wellness crayons, not just the primary colors, so you can start building a meaningful life. It's time to give singlehood a cape. I am drawn to curious men. I think the new man is curious and inward looking. And I think because most of my life I've been a walking reaction and angry, when I come across a man who is curious and sensitive and has the ability to look inward, put that pause before saying something or responding, it inspires me. And so your host today is that kind of man. I found him on the internet, and I also love that he's a therapist who just shows up in, t-shirt, jeans. He looks like a surfer, just a regular guy, and I can relate to that because on my therapist journey, I just showed up, t-shirt, jeans, and I felt like I didn't fit in because of that, because I wasn't wearing wrinkle-free pants or not tucking my shirt in. I felt very black sheep-ish, if you will. And so that's what attracted me to Flynn Skidmore. He spends his days like he's at a summer camp, running a therapy practice where he helps people understand and get what they want in relationships and in business. He creates some of the simplest, clearest, most, I hadn't thought of it like that, personal development content out there. What Flynn is most proud of is the way he cares for and listens to his online community and the remarkable outcomes of his clients and their experiences with him. Flynn can be found on Instagram at Flynn Skidmore. That's FlynnSkidmore. And I hope you enjoy this episode. Flynn, first, I want to thank you for being a part of this collective, for hosting episodes. This is great because it's the first time that I've seen you, met you. I mean, besides emails.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. So happy to meet you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, you know what attracted me to you was seeing someone on my feed who didn't look like a therapist. You know what I'm saying? And so from the outside, you just look like just a cool dude, like maybe a surfer, or, you're just like a t-shirt, casual, long hair, and speaking truth. And on my journey to becoming a therapist, I felt very on the outside because I looked more like you instead of, the Dockers and the shirts tucked in and the very kind of, clinical. And also when I was going through therapy school, most of my colleagues were women in their, midlife, Caucasian. And I was not only a minority, but also a dude. And so to see you on my feed was refreshing. And then I started following you and your content, and I was like, oh, this is good stuff. He seems like a very kind of pulling from honest and truth. And so that's why you're here.
Wow, cool. I'm really happy that you had that experience. I mean, I came across your stuff probably 4 or 5 years ago and had the same experience of you. I've been thinking about that over the last couple of days. Like I mean, you call yourself the angry therapist, and right away that's inviting people to think differently about what therapy might be or what a therapist is. So I really appreciate that you had a similar experience with me. I think that's really cool.
When did you decide to become a therapist? What was that journey like? How did that start?
So I was out of college. I really didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. I had been fascinated with mind-body connection since I was about 18. So I started working as a personal trainer at a gym. And knew that I loved mind-body connection. And ultimately, I came across this thing called bioenergetic analysis, which was created by this guy named Wilhelm Reich, who was a student of Freud's. And he kind of took psychoanalysis in the direction of body work. So he was doing analysis with people's posture and movement. And he ended up getting arrested. I can't remember why, but because he was like sharing really crazy information, and was looking at all this stuff with like life force energy. I think he called it orgone. But anyway, I found his stuff and I was like, yes, this is the thing that I've been trying to speak about, to learn about. So I found this institution called the Institute for Bioenergetic Analysis. I wanted to become certified in it, and I didn't know anything about therapy at the time. And these guys, it was like this institution on the Upper West Side in New York City. So these like classic old psychoanalysis guys. Yeah. And the guy who was heading it up was like, yeah, in order to do it, you have to be a therapist. And in order to be a therapist, you either have to have a PhD or you have to have a master's. And the fastest way to do it is to get a master's. So if you want to do this, get a master's. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. And that was that. I just followed it like that.
Wow. How old were you when that happened?
I think I was 24 at the time.
Oh, you were young.
24 or 25. I was young. Yeah.
So you did the 2 years, got your master's, and this was in New York?
So I was in New York City. I was running this small business, this like boutique fitness studio. Went and got my master's, moved to Philadelphia, and then lived in Philly for like 6 years, something like that.
And then did you do the hours and all that?
Did the hours, all that stuff. You mean like post?
So how many hours do you have to do on the East Coast? Because in California it's 3,000.
It's 2,000. I don't even remember. I think it's 2,000.
Oh, that's not fair.
So what I did was I became a cool school counselor. I love kids.
I did that too.
You did that also? Yeah, okay. So same thing, like got the hours in as a school counselor.
The kid. Well, that was just one of the things I did. But yeah, the hardest hours to get are the kid hours. And so if you're a school counselor, you're just knocking those out, playing Connect Four.
Yes.
15-year-olds.
It's the best thing ever. I didn't know that about you. That's so cool that you did that.
Yeah, I did that to get hours. Man, that was a long journey for me. So my therapist was the person that convinced me to become a therapist. And he said, you just got to go to school, get a master's. I'm not a school person. I hate school. I got the master's. And what he forgot to tell me, and maybe he didn't on purpose, was that there was 3,000 hours after that. And that's what took years, man. I took a year off, but it still took me, 5 years or so, just trying to get those hours. And then, of course, the big exam at the end. But wow. So you did all that in Philly, huh?
Did all that in Philly and then moved out to California 2 years ago. So COVID hit San Diego.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
From your videos, so there's always a sky, like it feels like just an ocean or the blue sky. And I'm like,
yes. I'm always I'm like walking by the ocean. So I'm curious for you. So you got your license, and then how long into having your license did you start to really do well in content and social media and your books?
Oh, all of that was an accident. I was going through a divorce at the time, and so I was rebuilding my own life, and I started a Tumblr blog back in like 2010. Man, this is before Instagram, before social media was a thing. And Tumblr made blogs popular, and then people started making blogs on their own website. And I called it The Angry Therapist. And I thought it was kind of funny that a therapist was angry. And I thought, it's a way of humanizing myself. I also, in my 20s, was a very angry person because I was miserable. But that's where I started, just Tumblr, man. And I started documenting my story. I mean, basically like what you're doing, but via blog format. And I must have pushed out 5,000 blog posts or so. Wow. I had a lot of time on my hands, man. And I got traction there. I think I got like 60,000 readers. And from Tumblr, I just took a butter knife and it rippled into whatever was next. So, Instagram, Facebook, all of that. And then of course I started doing videos, and that it's so much easier to pick up a phone and do a video than
Yes.
to sit down and write a blog post.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
it's
that turned
funny.
into
I'm thinking
practice and all that.
for someone who doesn't like school, it's really cool and interesting that you decided to write so much. I mean, 5,000 blog posts is an immense amount of writing.
Yeah, I basically journaled and just hit post afterwards. So it was kind of a
Uh-huh.
public journal. I wasn't doing it for anyone else but me. And
Uh-huh.
it's kind of what got me through my broken heart. It's
Mm-hmm.
and journaling, and I see you doing it in your videos. Journaling's powerful. It's a way to process kind of by yourself. And so I use Tumblr as a therapeutic tool.
Wow, cool.
So there was
Were
nothing in
you
your life that was a catalyst to you becoming a therapist, like a big event change. Like for me, it was divorce. It was more of something that you saw, like, okay, I had a passion for mind, body, and fitness. I see this thing over here. I'm going to marry the two.
I mean, I think there were as my interest in mind body connection was developing. I think one of the main reasons why I became really interested in mind body connection was because my dad was diagnosed with a chronic illness when I was 18. But he's such a loving guy, and also like classic blue collar warrior
Right.
energy. Like tough dude, and also had been sick most of my life. And was finally diagnosed with a chronic illness when I was 18. And I was really fascinated by what was happening, because it was clear to me that there was something happening with unprocessed, unhealed childhood trauma that he had experienced,
Mm-hmm.
and him being sick all the time. That connection was clear to me. And when I was like 18, 19, things just started to become clearer and clearer that there were parts of him that actually needed to be sick. Because those parts of him had learned that being sick was probably his best survival strategy in some ways, his best way of accessing love, safety, and belonging. So seeing things like that, putting those pieces together, I mean, I would say that was one of the main things that catalyzed my interest in learning about this kind of stuff.
It's pretty amazing that you saw that at 18. At 18, I was stealing car stereos, and you were connecting dots with what's going on internally with your father.
Well,
So
I was smoking a lot of weed, and I had just gotten like a bunch of surgery, so I couldn't play sports anymore. So I was smoking weed, and I started doing yoga, and the combination of those two things, where it's just like, whoa, I'm
mm,
really connecting these dots. So it's not like I was setting out to do anything noble. I was just smoking a lot of weed and like passing the time, and then it just happened to
you said safety. What was the three things you said?
love, safety, and belonging.
So talk about that. How does love, safety, and belonging, um, how does that play in our life?
That's it. I really appreciate you picking up on that and asking. So,
Mm-hmm.
the way that I see it, I mean, in so many ways, love, safety, and belonging are just arbitrary words. But the
Mm-hmm.
framework that I operate with is that we're always experiencing love, safety, and belonging. If we weren't, we would be dead. So,
Mm-hmm.
being alive is an indicator that there's some version of love, safety, and belonging happening. Now, I think the version of love, safety, and belonging that most people are experiencing is one that has been programmed or developed as a result of the experiences that they've had through life. So, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, if a person is growing up and it makes sense to be really anxious in the context of their relationship with their parents, like their subconscious is learning that anxiety is the appropriate version of love, safety, and belonging,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then that person's framework for experiencing life, like anxiety, might actually be their version of love, safety, belonging. And of course, consciously, they would likely choose something else.
Right.
Um, and I think
So
that
it-
that's
so if
that's
they're
really
if they're in a
Mhm.
relationship where there isn't anxiety, then they don't feel the love, safety, and belonging subconsciously.
they I mean, I imagine you see that all the time. Like when people start to get what they want, if what they want isn't familiar, then it can feel unsafe
Sure.
until it
Or
becomes
boring.
familiar.
Yep.
Or boring. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So in any given moment, we're operating with a framework of love, safety, and belonging. It's kind of like our basic needs. And what I think we get to do as we go through life is evolve our version of love, safety, and belonging so that it becomes more aligned with what we consciously want.
Mm. So then we're not being run by what was, or the distorted version, or I don't, maybe it's not distorted, but the love, safety, and belonging definition we learned while we're growing up. And no adult enters or no child enters adulthood unscarred, and we all had stuff happen as a child. So um, having a healthier, maybe the word, I don't know if it's healthier, but having a more honest or healthier definition of that as we grow up can become our radar, right? From as it goes from like the subconscious to the conscious.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The way that I think about it is like, it's funny that you caught the thing of like healthier and like maybe that's not the thing to call it, because I I think maybe what's more useful than something being healthy or unhealthy is just being clear on what we want
Mm-hmm.
and making conscious decisions to try to create what we want. So when we're operating with our subconscious programming, the stuff that happened through childhood, we learn all these survival mechanisms, and
Mm-hmm.
then life is happening by accident. Like when you're living life that way, I've lived a lot of my life that way. We're not making choices about what's happening. It's just happening by accident. But then
Mm-hmm.
what I think most people want is to be living life on purpose, where they're like, I want a loving, grounded, fun, joyful relationship. How can I purposely and intentionally create that, even if anxiety or chaos is the version of love, safety, and belonging I've experienced most of my life?
Mm-hmm. So is that what you do with clients? Is kind of, I mean, it's that one of the things that you do is help them guide them through that process.
Yeah, yeah. I think what I'm starting to see is that what I'm doing, what I really enjoy doing, is helping people get what they want, which is a very simple thing. I mean, to hear
Mm-hmm.
myself say that, it sounds really simple, but what the for me, the beauty and the nuance in that is understanding what it means to want something. Because like if I want a podcast with 1 million downloads a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a podcast with 1 million downloads a month. I want the feelings that I think I'll have access to when I have that. You know what
Right.
I
What's
mean? So
underneath?
exactly. Exactly. So helping people understand that what they want is actually about what they want to feel, and helping them set their lives up to be able to feel as much as they would like to feel as possible.
Yeah. What resonates with me with that is I always tell my clients to, instead of just see what you want, and I believe in what we see and what we visualize, but a lot of times we get to where we're going not because it looks the way we see it in our head, but because the feeling is there, and that's how we know that we're there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it doesn't match the vision. I mean, I never thought, I grew up in LA. I never thought I'd be living here up in Altadena. It's a little patch above Pasadena. I'm almost 50 and I'm raising a 2.5-year-old, and
Mm-hmm.
my life doesn't look how I imagined it would look. And, but the feeling that happened in my body, in the last 2 or 3 years has been the most, calm, the most, knowing, it feels like the unfolding is truthful, is like I feel like I've been here almost in a past life kind of thing.
Mm.
And so that's why I think I feel like this is where I'm meant to be, and things aren't
Mm.
unfolding as they should, not because of I'm tracing a vision, a very
Right.
specific vision.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, what that sounds like to me is that you're in a place where there's a whole lot of groundedness and satisfaction.
Well, yeah, a lot more than
More.
before. And of course, that doesn't mean that I'm continuing to build. I still want things, like a 90s 911 triple black turbo, stuff like that. I like cars and motorcycles. But I mean, there are things that I want. Like you just said, a million, a podcast that gets a million, whatever, of course, I've got goals. But yeah, putting more weight on the feeling instead of what's on the surface, I think that's really powerful.
Gary V.
Yes, not personally. Yeah. I met him once actually, but I don't know. I don't know him personally. Yeah, I was on a show called Planet of the Apps, and he was one of the judges.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You were presenting an app on there?
Yeah, years ago I had a partner. It's now a life coaching company called Lumia, but before that it was called the name changed so many times, but we were in an incubator and we applied to pitch for the show, and it was in front of Gary V. Who's the person that owns Honest Company? Female, was an actress.
I don't even know that company.
Honest, she's like a billionaire now. And the person that owns Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and anyway, so we got the pitch in front of them, kind of like Shark Tank, and he was a really cool guy. So we got to meet him and stuff. But anyway,
that's awesome. Gary V. Really cool. So cool that you've been in that place doing that kind of work. So cool.
Yeah.
So I think that he has so many great things to offer, and one of my favorite things that he's said, or that I've heard him say, is that he wants to buy the New York Jets.
Right.
So he grew up in New Jersey, loves, it's like, it's such a funny thing, like the people who like the Jets and the people who like the Giants, so that's like a whole other thing. But he wants to buy the New York Jets. Now, what he says is that he doesn't care if he actually ends up buying the Jets or not, because he's aware of what he wants as a result of buying the Jets. And he's aware that he can give that thing to himself right now in the process of becoming a person who wants to buy the Jets. You know what I'm saying? So he's aware of the results of that, which are certain feelings, and he holds himself accountable to feeling those things in the process of pursuing his goals. And I just think that's such a beautiful way of experiencing life. It's like this paradox of being fully satisfied because I'm feeling the way that I want to right now, and I'm also not yet satisfied. I'm hungry to create these other things, which I think is really cool.
It's also really hard to do. I mean, maybe not. I mean, maybe for some people it isn't. I know for me, to not get hooked, as they say in Buddhism, and to it's the same thing as almost like non-attachment, being happy, and finding life in your life, finding joy in what you have, practicing gratitude, and at the same time wanting more, not having a ceiling, and that it's a interesting dance. It's hard to pedal that bike.
I've been meaning to put this poll up on my Instagram because I'm really curious to know what people would say. But I've been thinking about, like, okay, if you had two options, if on the one hand your option was to blow everything up and start from scratch, that's one. The other one is to just make the absolute best of what you have right now. What would you do? I haven't done it yet, so I don't know what people say, but I am really curious. I'm curious what you would think.
When you say blow everything up and start from scratch, what do you get from that? What do you get in return? Just a blank canvas?
I guess so. Yeah. I don't
and
really
then what's
know.
What's the other option?
And the other option is to make the best of what you have right now. So maybe an approachable way of thinking that might be like, let's say, like with a group of friends. It's like, do you want to just like, would you leave all of the friendships that you have access to right now and start over, start fresh? Or would you make the best of the friendships that you have right now?
I think for me, it depends on if the whatever you're trying to build, whether it's a relationship or an empire, is salvageable, if it's healthy, if it's
mm-hmm.
there are friendships that have expired that I don't think people should invest in, because you're only 50% of that friendship. That may be a waste of time. But I think that if it's salvageable, if you can rebuild, then there's growth in that journey. So I'm a big fan of the hero's journey. This tattoo is the kind of the design thing of it, and I try to lay that into everything. So whatever you're doing, that there's going to be a call to adventure. There's going to be the comfort to discomfort. There's going to be opportunities to slay your dragons, and then for you to return to the village changed, and then that journey is the value you bring to the village, because now you have a story, and that story, if shared, becomes bigger than you. I think it's happened to all of us,
I love
whether
that.
we're talking about Gary Vee and how his mom knitted him a jet sweater because they were so broke and he couldn't buy one, right? Which was the imprint, right? And that it started from that, I think, and then what that means to him, and then him wanting to buy the jets. And then he talks about how if he did, that sweater would be framed and at the entrance of the of the stadium, right? Or the story you have with your father and your curiosity of movement and all that, and then for me, divorce and failed screenwriter, and then my rebirth, and then trying to work in more honest, unconventional ways, and there's a journey in all of those things that I think are tied to our story.
I did post this to an Instagram story recently, or I think I did a reel on this, because I was reading this book by this guy named Alex Hermosi, who's like he's a guy who's making a lot of money, and he talks about like sales and sales psychology and that kind of stuff. I think he's really, really smart. So I'm reading his book on how to design an offer, and in the first chapter, he's talking about how like a guy who worked for him signed this deal. The guy was supposed to get paid a $22,000 commission. Alex Hermosi had $23,000 in his account. It's like 2 nights before Christmas. And the company that they signed the deal with backs out last minute. And for some reason, Alex Hermosi still has to pay his guy $22,000. So he pays him. He's got about $1,000 left in his account. So $1,000 left to his name. And he takes a screenshot of it, and he posts the screenshot in the book. And he says in there that he took the screenshot because he knew that he would be telling that story. So
right.
I thought that was really fascinating, because that really resonated with me. And I'm curious if that resonates with you. Anytime I've been through difficult things in my life, and there have been some things that are like most people, but like pretty severely difficult. I had an awareness that I would be using that story to serve other people in some way. And I'm curious if that was the case for you.
2010, getting traction on Tumblr, broke, no money, roommates, no friends, just finding fitness. And I was helping someone via email. This is when, webcams and video, that stuff wasn't really a thing. People were still on AOL. There was, broadband wasn't, wide. And so email was huge. And I remember spending a lot of time on this long email and just helping her free. I mean, I had, I wanted to give back. And so after I helped her, she PayPal'd me $20. And PayPal was new. It was new to the idea of transferring money from your bank account electronically was mind blowing. And I remember I was crying, and I took because there weren't cameras on your phones then, or a lot of them, they were flip phones. So I had this real camera, and I turned the video, and I pointed it to my face, and I was in tears. And I said, well, 2 things. One, that someone found me valuable. Like this person, I didn't ask for it. She gave me $20 because she found my advice valuable. So that meant a lot to me, right? So that was one reason. One revelation. And then the other revelation was, holy shit, you can make money online. And that
Mm-hmm.
blew my mind. Like the entrepreneur in me went crazy. Cause then it's like, what else could I do? What else can I do to actually make this more my life than punching a clock, right? I feel like I was punching the sky when I was at home typing and tumbling. And I said into the camera, when you don't make it about you, the universe will.
Mm.
And I remember that. So that's my snapshot. That's my snapshot of,
Wow.
like what you're
That's
saying.
of the $1,000 in the
Of the
account.
$1,000. Yeah. And it's
Wow.
a, something that I keep in my back pocket, to always remember that if you don't make it about you, stars line up and things happen, and the universe will. And so that was an example of me not making it about me by being very thorough and patient and giving with my time into someone's email. I can't do that today because I just don't have that kind of time. But
Yep.
I had that kind of time then, so I just gave my heart and I helped as much as I could. And then it wasn't the $20, obviously. It was the feeling. It was a feeling of feeling valuable.
Yes.
And then it was the revelation of, oh shit, you can make money online. Yeah, that was the first domino, man. And I remember that like yesterday.
Yeah. And what I hear in there, I kind of like projecting my own experience out of that. It's like, holy fuck. The difficult things that I've been through are worth something. Like I can help other people using the insight that I've gained through going through hard stuff.
If you're not, when you're in the trenches, just complaining, running, and numbing, whatever, because then you don't see it, right? But I think there's gold. I think there's gold in the trenches, and I think that if you're able to notice these moments, the snapshot of that guy that had $1,000 in the bank, or the experience I had, those are all kind of nods from the universe. Those are injected with hope, and then I think those moments, they give you fuel. They give you, just kind of like 92 octane of like, okay, here's where I'm going now. Here's what I'm going to do. It's like it feels spiritual almost.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, I've been over the last couple of years, I have found that all of this stuff, producing content, running a business, it becomes so much easier and so much more rewarding when you make it about other people. When you make it about listening to other people, like listening to people's language, what they're experiencing, what they want. When I first started my business, I've been trying to make content over the last couple of days. I haven't been able to like capture this, but I really made it all about me. I remember when I was first like writing my website, trying to convince the world about how important mind-body connection and consciousness is, right? But like, and I find that a lot of entrepreneurs do the same kind of thing, where it's like seeing their modality as sacred, whereas the sacred thing is actually the audience's experience, or it's the person's experience that you're helping, and you're offering tools to support them and help them. At least for me personally, like I found that model, not seeing what I have to offer and not seeing my perspective as necessarily sacred, but a tool that I'd like to help a person with, has made this experience so much more enjoyable and so much more creative for me. I have so much more access to more material and information and perspectives.
Yeah. I feel like I've made it about me most of my life. And even today, of course, there are days that I make it about me. Of course, there are days that, how much is that sponsorship, or that, is it worth doing? There's a lot of me making it about me, of course. But I do feel like, and I agree with you, if you feel like you're more of a conduit, that you are this being where, if you are in your solid self instead of more your pseudo, meaning exchanging your truth for membership, that's pseudo, inauthentic, seeking approval, validation, chasing shiny things. That was all me, my 20s and 30s. But if you are more authentic or in your solid self, stand on your truth, I think you become a conduit. I think you become a prism. And I think that if you are brave enough to share your gifts and really lean into them and practice and hone, it's almost like this light comes in from your feet and out your head, and a rainbow shoots out almost, you know? So like, you, the universe works through you. You go from being, this ego driven person to this prism, this stone to this prism. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think magic happens there. And I think, I felt stuff like that in my life before. One example of this was during the pandemic. I started doing Zoom groups, and I brought a team together, kind of like the Single on Purpose podcast, right? Rotating host. And we just started helping people, and it grew. And I called it the lab. And I thought, like, we're all stuck at home. Let's just use Zoom as a way to connect. And then all the instructors were teaching different topics, trauma, relationships, whatever. And we helped thousands. And then, I had to pay the instructors. So it turned into a membership site, and an app and all that. And then there was a part of me that was trying to scale it, because naturally that's like what the world is telling us, right? How can we scale this? And it wasn't successful in that way. And then it hit me where I was like, this isn't meant to be scaled. This was the magic summer, and it was great. And, and then I recently closed it because I was just doing other things. But I felt a calmness that it wasn't meant to last longer than it did. So it ran for 2 years. We helped thousands. The instructors connected. There's also people who actually, formed romantic relationships. It was amazing. I mean, overall, it was amazing. It was a bigger than me experience. And I remember when I closed it, I felt guilt, and I felt like a small part of me felt like a failed entrepreneur. Like I couldn't, I wasn't able to scale it, And then I realized after that, because that's all ego, I realized, that was what it was meant to be. Nothing more, nothing less.
I love that you call it the magic summer moment. It reminds me of, it's beautiful. Like when I went to summer camp as a kid, I always found that it was easier to fall in love at summer camp than during the school year.
There's something about summer camp. You're away from home, different schools possibly. Yeah, there's something about summer camp that is magical.
I think one of the magical things about it is that your time is limited. So knowing that your time is limited in some ways, I think allows for a deeper dive into vulnerability and openness than maybe otherwise, right? If something is indefinite, then there's all this creating all this noise with predictions about the future and projections and all that kind of stuff. So there's something, and as you're describing that, I'm like, wow, yeah, we do all have all these narratives as entrepreneurs, like the most successful companies or the most successful business endeavors are the ones that are the most sustainable, the longest lasting ones. But what if sometimes something is just a year long or 2 years long, and that's exactly what it's meant to be? I love that.
Right. Yeah. And I, it took a while for me to even accept that and to sit with it and to believe it, to sit with it. But yeah, I do believe that. Yeah. With projects and also with relationships, not all relationships are meant to be forever.
I meant that when you were saying that earlier, I was like, wow, I'm really curious about this. The thing about salvageable. You're like, if a relationship isn't salvageable, then let it be and create something new. What do you think are the best ways to know if something is salvageable or not?
Yeah. So one, if the other person is going to hit the ball back. So if you're in a relationship, friendship with a family member, or intimate romantic relationship, if you're the only one that's trying to work on yourself or taking ownership, the other person is pointing fingers and is in denial, to me, that's not salvageable. It's 50-50. And even if you were 100 of your 50, you're still another 50. Someone needs to. And so I think the beginning of salvageable means two people on the same page, both willing to look inward and work toward the relationship. If that's
Mm-hmm.
not there, then I don't know how one person is going to fix the whole relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you so you're 50 years old, you said?
I'm 49. Watch your
49.
language, Flynn.
Right. I thought you said
Yeah.
50. Sorry.
I'm swimming towards 50. I'll be 50 in April, so I don't know what that is. Less than half a year.
I mean, you look great for 50. They're so
Filters.
that's
Lighting.
So that's cool for me to know about, because I'm 32 and I have all these ideas about what makes for a successful and sustainable relationship, but don't really have time as something to speak to whether or not they actually work.
How many relationships have you been in personally?
Oh, five. I mean, it depends on how we're defining a relationship.
Right. I mean, you would define it. Whatever a relationship means to you. So 5.
All right, I'll do that. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. 5.
And what were they as far as like length overall? A few years?
The longest one was almost 6 years.
Okay, yeah.
And the shortest that we're going with in this thing is like 1.5 years.
Right. What were some of your greatest revelations from those relationships?
Okay. Probably
the
greatest revelation that I've ever had about my own experience of love. I left, it was this kind of interesting time. It was in the fall. I had just committed to leaving my job as a school counselor, so running my private practice full time, and had just left this relationship that I had been in for almost 2 years. And I took some mushrooms and went on a long walk. And I was living in Philly at the time. And I realized that what I had been doing for most of my relationships was seeing a quality in a person that I thought that I couldn't replicate, that I needed to have in my life. And sometimes those qualities were like being organized with Excel sheets and being financially literate, stuff like that. So I'd recognize a quality in a person. Now, I also realized that there is something about the relationship dynamic where I wasn't allowed to be as expansive as I would have liked to be. The relationship dynamic didn't support me being as expansive as I would have liked. However, I was attached to this person being something that I needed them to be. So what I would do is make myself small in order to make them comfortable, because I thought that was the best strategy to kind of change them into who I needed them to be.
Right.
So needing them to be something. And of
course, all of this happening underneath, and you looking back and having these revelations, because when we're in relationships, we don't really, I mean, I guess you can through couples therapy and stuff, but a lot of it is underneath. We have to unearth it. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I would say I was vaguely aware of it during, but it was really in retrospect where I was like, wow, I was miserable in this experience, miserable. And like every day convincing myself like how, like, some things are just like this, some things you got to just commit to, like, operating with all those kinds of narratives to keep me in it. But yeah, after the fact, realized like, wow, I was investing energy into like blaming this other person, but really I was just choosing to be smaller. I was choosing to make myself small, and it made sense to be in that relationship because then I didn't have to deal with the fear of what life might look like if I actually committed to my expansiveness. So once I got hit with that realization, I was able to make a choice. I was like, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I'm only going to invest in expansiveness.
Mm. I love that word expansiveness. I tend to bring things to street level just because in my own head, if I don't simplify it, I don't understand. And so sometimes I'll break things down to is it constricting you or expanding you? Is it constricting you
Mm-hmm.
or expanding you? And how much, if it's constricting you, how much of that constriction is on you, not the other person
Mm-hmm.
or the relationship, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also like that you said the relationship dynamic instead of her or him. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
I like that you
Mm-hmm.
said because the relationship dynamic is created by both, right? And
Mm-hmm.
um there's tracks laid in every relationship, and so I
Yep.
think we're very fast to blame. But you're saying the dynamic was stunting, and I think that's important
Yep.
language. Yeah. So let me
Yeah.
ask you this: Are you?
Because
Oh,
mm-hmm.
sorry, go ahead.
Gonna say, like, what I've come to be able to see, which I like this perspective, is that people show you exactly who they are. People show
Mm-hmm.
you who they are in their patterns. I think a lot of the times we spend our energy in relationships wanting it to be different than what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and then blaming the other person for not being the way that we want it to be when they're just being themselves. So the way that I see it now is like any person that I'm with where I was contracted and not as expansive as I would like, that's not, it doesn't say anything bad about them. They are who they are, and the
Right.
dynamic is what it is.
Right.
Ultimately, if I'm going to take the most accountable position, the thing that I can say is that I'm choosing to be contracted, and I would
Mm-hmm.
prefer to choose to be expansive.
Yeah, I love that. I also love that we're just two dudes speaking this way. You know, it's
Yeah.
part. It's actually part of why my hunch on you, and it is correct. I felt in my body like, hey, reach out to this guy. This is good because I think it's important for men, especially today, to be having these conversations and not just be talking about,
Mhm.
you know. Cars and getting laid and whatever, right? Like just locker room stuff. So I think
Mhm.
that is refreshing. Men talking
It
about love and
is.
relationships. Yeah. So are you single today or are you dating? What are you doing?
I'm in a relationship with someone. Her name is Emily,
Mm,
and I say that we've been dating since February, which she laughs at because really we've been dating since April.
hmm.
But I knew immediately in February that I wanted to be in a relationship with this person, like when we were first seeing each other and dating. So we've known each other since January, February. And have been together only since April.
Got it. And how is this love experience? I mean, I'm assuming your definition
It's
of love is different today than it was, in your 20s.
I, yeah, it's I really appreciate you asking about this. It is more satisfying than I
Mm,
ever thought that an experience of love could be.
why? I want to know why. The listeners
Yeah,
want to know why. I mean, I'm happy for you. That's great. But we all want to know why. Right?
yeah.
Some of us aren't
Well,
happy for you. Some of us are like, fuck you, man.
shut the fuck up.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so going
I
back,
think secretly a lot of people don't want therapists to have successful relationships because it kind of kicks them off their soapbox, which I
yeah,
don't
I
want to be
get
on
that.
anyway. But anyway.
I get that. I get that. So, about 2 years ago, I made a commitment to. All right, I'll tell kind of a funny story. So, I'm in a relationship with a person at the time about 2 years ago, a little longer, and I'm still living in Philly. Now, at the time, I had through my life had been the type of person who struggled to bring different groups of friends together,
Hmm.
um, because I was kind of different people with different groups of people. I would be like uh, tending to what I thought other people needed, right?
Hmm.
So I was in a relationship with the person where that was very much the case, which was part of the contraction. Like I had fun with her. It was a fun, good relationship in some ways, but also I was a very specific version of myself with her. And so my sister, my younger sister, who I like, she's my best friend, and I'm my favorite version of myself with her.
Yeah.
My sister Abby came to visit, and we all had dinner at my place in Philly, and it was a horrendous time. When the person who I was with at the time, she left to go home, Abby started crying because it didn't feel good for her, and she didn't like the idea of spending years and years with having to not have the version of me that she liked the most,
right.
which is also the version of me that I like the most. So after that was sort of the final straw, and I ended the relationship. And then I decided that I'm never going to enter a relationship again where I feel contraction. I'm going to use the expansiveness as my compass and only invest my energy in relationships where I experience that expansiveness. So after about a year and a half of living that way, making choices about my relationships, making choices about what I do, where I live, using expansiveness as my compass, I think I just sort of ended up in a place where it made sense to meet a person where expansiveness happened. So that's the overarching story. And then I'm sure there are a lot of details in there that would be helpful for people to hear about. But the overarching thing is this sort of ruthless commitment to expansiveness.
The collision of both of you creates expansiveness in you, and you like the person that you are, that is promoted and encouraged when you're around this person, and that's why this is good for you. It sounds
beautifully said. She wants, if we can think of a person as as a sphere or a globe, and there are all these different areas in that sphere, and we can grow that sphere, make it more complex, more beautiful. She wants me to be the most beautiful, complex sphere. She wants all of me.
Yeah.
And I want the same for her. I want her to be exactly who she wants to be. And so the relationship dynamic is able to support each of us being exactly who we want to be.
Yeah, it's interdependence. It's
interdependence.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I love it, man. Thank you for sharing that story and also delivering it in that way. I think one of your unique gifts is I feel from you curiosity. I feel from you someone who is neutral on, which is hard to do, right? So looking at all sides, and then careful with your words, which I am not. So I appreciate all those things. What are some of the things that you are going to do or want to do as a rotating host on this podcast? And even though it's called Single on Purpose, and of course, this whole thing started when I realized that a lot of clients that I was seeing, mostly women in their 30s, just depressed. Every other area of their life was great, but because they were single, they felt the ticking clock, and they just it just really crushed them, and having a horrible experience with singlehood. So that's how this whole thing happened, as far as turning it into a book and then now this. But what are some of the things that you're thinking about doing for not just singles, but anyone who wants to connect to themselves?
It's a great question. Something what I'm really fired up about is usefulness. So I'm very careful to be presenting information in a way. I try to make things useful. I try because I think that most people know most of the advice that they could be given.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what I'd really like to offer people is how to take that advice and turn it into action. That's something that really inspires me and fires me up. So action orientation. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do to get more of the things that we want? And what I'm really excited to offer the world is this understanding that what we want, we don't get what we want until we realize that what we want is available right now, and start
Mm-hmm.
practicing in as many moments as possible of experiencing what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I've seen is that when people start to live that way, a really simple example would be like, so if what we want is a feeling, right? And you're pouring tea, you could have a whole bunch of different experiences pouring tea. You could you could say you want to pour tea because it's going to be soothing, but you go into pouring tea and actually it's an experience that's frustrating and chaotic because you're
Mm-hmm.
rushing the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really simple example would be like, okay, so what would it look like to do this thing in a calm way? What's it look like to do soothing? And I think that if a person is making a choice about the experience they want to have in as many moments as possible, that person is a person who's likely to get the three-dimensional things that they want. Like for you, it's a certain car, podcast downloads, that kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd really like to teach people how to do that, how to understand that what they want is actually available right now, and they likely won't get what they want until they learn that what they want is available right now.
Mm. Yeah, what comes to my mind is most people not believing what they want is available. I think,
Mm-hmm.
and me included, I think it's out there. And
Mm-hmm.
so getting to the place of actually believing that you can have that in itself is a journey. Just
Mm-hmm.
getting to believe that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this collective. And I'm excited to hear you and whatever you're gonna do on this podcast. This space is yours, and you can do whatever you want with it. Share your story, do whatever, And so, I think it's gonna help so many people.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah,
really, really appreciate you inviting me on, and us having this chat. I've loved getting to know you. I'm really excited to be here.
yeah. Thanks, brother. I really appreciate it. And also, thanks for all the work that you do. Where can people find you?
On Instagram, I'm at Flynn Skidmore,
Yep. Is
FLYNN SKIDMORE.
that your main, as far as social media? Is that your main place?
Yeah, that and TikTok. I'm way more engaged on Instagram. So
Hmm.
I invest a lot of energy into developing community on Instagram. So I'm
Sure.
engaged in the comments and all that. So
Right. Right.
that's where the magic is happening,
Yeah.
I would say.
Which I do none of, which I need to. I know. Um, and then what are you building? So like if someone wants to check out your services, what is it that you offer?
So what I'm leaning into the space of something called impact mentorship. I'm
Mm-hmm.
finding that a lot of entrepreneurs um, who have been pretty successful have found that in their success, they're not having the impact that they were hoping that they would make. In terms of
Mm-hmm.
impact, we're talking about like making a shift in culture.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've been really inspired by lately is helping people get what they want in relationships and in business, and learning how to become someone who's impactful and influential.
Mm.
So that's my one-on-one work.
Right.
What I'm focused on right now. Um, I'm just finishing up something called the client attraction container, which is
Mm-hmm.
it's been so fun. It's a 4-module series. Each module is 2 months long, so we're just finishing up the first 2 months. And really, what it's about is about helping people build communities around them. By creating great content and building their business as a result.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
relevant. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Flynn, thank you so much. And hey, final question. What should we call this episode? As you rewind, like a montage or a flashback, this whole thing, and it's just skipping around some of the conversations that we had, what would you call this episode? I'm actually going to type it into this thing while you
Uh-huh.
say it.
There's something about like summer magic. What was the thing that you said? What
Summer
was your
magic.
words?
Summer camp magic.
Summer camp
Summer
magic.
camp magic.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go really abstract? All right, I'm gonna call it summer camp magic.
I
With
love that. We'll see how that
yeah,
goes.
awesome. Well, thank you for listening, everyone, and be well.
Have a great night.
I hope that episode was helpful. Hey, listen, if you want to share your singlehood journey, if you've gone somewhere and come back, if you have revelations and wisdom, please share your story. It's going to help other people. Nothing makes us feel more connected than hearing other people's stories. So just send me the audio of your story, and you can just record it directly from your phone and email it to theangrytherapist@gmail.com. Also, if you want our Single on Purpose newsletter, go to singleonpurpose.life. That's singleonpurpose.life. You will get tools and articles and other people's stories, and also Zoom links to private gathers. So if you want to join our community, go to singleonpurpose.life. Thank you for listening. Be well. We hope you tell a friend.
Hey, so my name is Katie and I live in London. I broke up with my boyfriend of 2.5 years about a year ago when I went through another mental health crisis and found myself becoming too dependent on my partner. I was really in a dark place and I couldn't see when the tables would be able to turn and I'd be in a place where I could support him again. And I felt like I was being absolutely rubbish at everything. And so I thought taking out being a bad girlfriend from the equation would give me some peace. But we were also at a crossroads. We'd spent every weekend together during COVID, but hadn't made the move to move in because of different locations across London. And he continued to work in Southeast London when I lived with my children North London in the weeks, and they went to their dads at weekends. But we got, 2.5 years in, thinking about getting serious. He ideally would have liked to have a child. I was going further and further away from that idea. And I also realised that we both suffered mental health and we both accommodated each other's mental health. But it got to a crux where my own trauma brought about how he hadn't dealt with his trauma. And so I decided it was time to make a break. And I completely cut contact with him, not to be harsh, but so that we could heal without any complexity or, any difficulty about a grey area of a friendship after what was really, at the time, a very loving relationship and supportive for the time that we were together. But I realised also that I had just stumbled from one relationship to another, and realised that I was both anxiously attached to everyone I'd been with and had that tendency to be codependent and feel needed all the time and have someone that I could rely on as well. So I committed to myself to stay single. I downloaded Audible and listened to The Angry Therapist. Thank you. Your I can't remember what it's called, but the one about being single. And it really helped me. I really resonated with your story and parts of it. But I have really, really enjoyed over this last year getting to know myself and being comfortable with myself and enjoying my own time and protecting that. And I've gone through like that breakup thing of not being able to listen to love songs without feeling like I'll never feel that way again. And I used to feel like that. And then just one day realising I was listening to those songs again and just being happy for those who were in that situation. To then just not even having dating on my radar. When I first was out of the relationship, I actually was listening to a lot of your TikToks, your short videos, and other influencers on relationships as well. I can't think of their names right now, but it just really helped me to process kind of the mistakes I'd made, how my priorities weren't right, how I wasn't being somebody that I would like to date, and how also I became all consumed with the relationship. In so much so that I didn't have interests that were just for me, and I wasn't the person that people fell in love with when they fell for me, because I just became all about the relationship. And so I've just spent this year reconnecting to the things that I enjoy, building myself up, volunteering, and it's got me this week a paid role working within mental health and doing peer support work that really, really resonates with who I am, with my story. I haven't had to hide my story to employers. I'm actually using my lived experience and focusing on my career and my children and my house, and just having a peace that love will find me when it's meant to, and when life is settled for me and I know how someone can fit in. Obviously I will compromise as well, and some of the issue with my ex-boyfriend was that I didn't feel he was compromising enough for me as a single parent and sacrificing enough. And I realised that it was his possibly undiagnosed PTSD and trauma that was getting in the way of how much he could compromise and give. And there were parts of him as well that he would not let me into. And I had laid my soul bare through my crisis. I had hit a complete rock bottom and been completely open with him. And I didn't feel that he was giving me that too. So I became very aware of trauma bonds, and so many red flags. I've been in a controlling, coercive, abusive relationship previously, and realised that my dating after that was just a completely unhealthy coping mechanism for me to distract myself and just constantly have somebody. I became addicted to attention, and I realised if I want attention from men, I can go on the internet, I can get that straight away. Even if I want sex from men, I could go and I could find that really easily, but that is not fulfilling, and it ultimately led me to have lower self-esteem. Whereas now I've found a life where I'm building up my self-esteem, I'm building up myself, I'm reading books that I just enjoy for fun, that I didn't have the brain power for before because I was just chasing other people. So yeah, that's my singlehood story, and I'd be quite happy if it is for years to come. My children are 10 years old and 8 years old, and I share care with my ex, and we're very amicable with that. But I have to put them first, and find somebody who will kind of fit in with my antisocial hours of both work and caring for my children. And I'm happy to do that, over a longer period of time if it's going to last forever. So yeah, that's my story. I hope you enjoy hearing it, and many others. And I'd be interested to see what you're going to do with these stories. So I hope that's been helpful and succinct enough. I have a tendency to waffle, so I'll end this now. So thank you to you and your wife for your content. I've read one of your books. I'm interested to read more, and thank you for sharing some of your journey and your stories with me and others, because it's really helped me in finding myself too. Thanks.